Welcome to Fostering Parenthood. Consent, porn,
normal relationship,
being a teen mom,
my first real adult love,
what it's like to be a foster child.
Every person I had an attachment with had left.
How trauma impacts your decision making.
I didn't feel very accepted and I didn't feel very safe.
And he said, you are lowering your own value by putting up with this.
But I wish someone was there to be there and tell me that it wasn't okay.
How do I honor providing that space for them?
It's about being in a place to be open to someone sharing with you their hurts.
Making sure that you guys are going into things open and supportive, or just even willing, right, to have these conversations.
I need you to find the strength to call someone and say, I'm drowning right now.
It's helpful to know yourself first as a caregiver.
But I just want caregivers to know that you're not alone.
You called me mom. Welcome to another episode of Fostering Parenthood. Today we'll be continuing a discussion about mental health with a former foster youth, Elyzabeth. Elyzabeth volunteered to share her story of what it was like for her to enter new foster homes, one after the other, and how these transitions impacted her mental health. Elyzabeth is a former foster youth and a Youth Advisory Board member of the Reproductive Health Equity Project. Whether you're a caregiver, social worker, or simply interested in learning more about this important topic, we invite you. Join us for this informative and insightful conversation. Sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Hi, Elyzabeth. Thank you for joining us today on this podcast.
Hi, Dorothy. I'm glad to be here. Really excited about this topic.
It's a tough topic. I think that anytime we talk about mental illness, our society has this, this kind of dark cloud that oftentimes hovers over us. And we can talk about just about everything else, but when it comes to mental health or mental wellness, I find that a lot of folks don't want to talk about it. And I really appreciate your willingness to come on and share your experiences. Now, you were a foster youth, right?
Yes. I've been in the foster care system since I was 13 or 14 is when I entered.
Can you share with us those experiences?
Yeah, so, first coming into the foster care system, before that, when it came to mental health, I've already been in and out of therapy several times. Nothing really worked. I couldn't really find the right fit. And then going into foster care when, it was court ordered, that just kind of made everything worse because when you're forced to do something, you don't want to do it, especially when you have this mistrust of everything and, are they going to tell your social worker? Are they going to tell, your foster parents? Who are they going to tell? But after that, is when I was able to start reaching out and getting mental health care where, I didn't feel like any of the thing was going to be shared with me or with other people. It was just going to stay confidential between me and the therapist.
Did that make a big difference to you? I mean, when I'm listening to you, I have to tell you as a caregiver, sometimes it's frustrating because we're kind of on this side where we want to help heal a child. We want to help be there for them. And yet much of what they talk about with RHEP teams or with the clinicians is confidential. And I'm happy that it's confidential, but it's really tough to be on the other side where you're trying to help and yet you don't really know what you're helping with.
Yeah, I think with that, the most important thing is just, to wait for, them to open up to you. You don't want to force anything out of them. I know that is something that made a big difference for me because with one set of foster parents that I had, they actively, after a session I had with the therapist, they would actively go in and be like, so what did she talk about? Can you tell us about her background? And, for me, I just met you guys. I don't really know you. Why do you think you have a right to know everything about my life without sharing anything about yourself or without getting to know me a little bit, but another set of foster parents I had, they waited and they didn't pressure me. And that made me feel like I could open up and like I could speak about it.
God, that's a really important thing to share with folks. I'm sorry, but I probably would have been the one that said, okay, how can I help her? Can you share with me something so that I know what not to say or what to say? But hearing from your perspective really helps to understand that it's not up to me, right, to heal. It's up to me just to be there when you're ready.
Yeah, it definitely comes from a good place, but it's, don't want to pressure anyone to open up or touch anything when they're not ready for it yet.
What do you think with the experience that you've had with different therapists and different, group therapy versus singular therapy versus perhaps psychiatric hospitals? What made the biggest difference? Was it you, or was it the type of therapy you received?
It's a good question. I think it was a combination of both, in the sense that once I was ready and like able to trust that, the providers aren't gonna go and share anything with anyone, that was helpful. But then in terms of like the care that I received, I've done all three of those, so I can talk about each of them. Mm-hmm. Group therapy, personally, I found not to be the most helpful because, I felt being in a room of strangers, I didn't feel comfortable. But for some people, it's great. You get that sense of community. And then when it came to individual therapy, it's really hard to find the right person who fits with you. So you just have to keep going and going, and then with hospitalization, for me, that's always just been a bad experience, because with those situations, it's always very intrusive and, you're forced into an unfamiliar setting and, there's so many people around you don't know, and it's just very chaotic and overwhelming until you're able to kind of stabilize. But once you are, it's like this feeling of relief, that you made it through a crisis and then you're able to kind of come down from it.
I'm really getting the sense that your mental wellness came when you were ready and not necessarily this magic pill or this magic session where this epiphany, right? Like, wow, that's it. I'm all well. But it really was a process and that you had to be ready for it.
Yeah, definitely. It's something you can't force.
Did you find that anything that happened to you during your journey actually set you back?
Yeah, definitely. I know after the first experience I had where I was hospitalized, that one definitely sent me back because, I felt like I confided in this therapist and their reaction was to send me away. So, in my head, that kind of just led to these feelings of, wow, I'm being left again, which is something I'm sure a lot of foster youth can relate to, that feeling of, wow, okay, now this person doesn't want me and this person doesn't. That's kind of a feeling that I feel is common for all of us. So that really set me back. And it took a while to kind of recover from that and be okay with reaching out for help again after.
Oh, I can see how, trust in another person, whether they're close to you or not, just another person saying, okay, we're going to send you wherever against your will or someplace that you haven't chosen to go, would kind of set everything back in motion. And I think that kids and caregivers actually don't understand that they do have something called voice and choice. meaning, you can say this isn't a good fit. You can ask for a new therapist. You can say, hey, group therapy isn't right for me. I'm not feeling good about it, or it's not helping, it's hindering. And I think far too many times, much like medical care, right, we think, well, this is what they said, I have to do it. And we do have the ability to stand up for ourselves and say, I think another therapist would be best for me, or I want a male, I want a female, I want, whatever it is that you think is going to be that healing element that's going to help you along your journey. We get to ask. We get to make changes. Were you aware of that?
I definitely was aware of it to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely, I knew there were different people out there, and I knew that other people had the experience of, switching and trying to find the right person.
Mm-hmm.
But, growing up in the life that I did and being in foster care, I feel like not much feels like a choice, because it's always, a lot of it feels like you just have to accept whatever you're given. And so especially the court-ordered therapy is like, okay, well, I have to do this. So I don't think about what power do I have that I can pick a different therapist to go to, because it just feels, I have to go to a therapist anyway. Like, it feels controlled for me. So you don't think about what power you can take from the situation when you feel so powerless at the time.
That's a big part of healing, is feeling that you have the power to heal. You have the power to make change that's necessary in your life so that you can get better. You have the power to say, I don't like that, or I want this to change. And when you feel powerless, which oftentimes our society does, right? We take kiddos out of their home, and in many cases is necessary, right, for the child's safety. But that we do it sometimes without letting them know why. And it's that constant, what did I do wrong? I'm being put in this home and I had absolutely no say in where I went, who I went with, and what geographic area I landed in. How do you think we can help children to feel more control?
I think just give them more options in little things. It doesn't have to be some big, crazy, out there concept. It could just be, if they're coming into your home for the first time, what kind of bed sheets would you like? Would you like the blue ones or the pink ones? Just give them a little bit of power in just little things so they can feel like they belong, they have some kind of say in their environment, and they have some kind of semblance of control that they have in their life.
That's really valuable advice. I think we get so excited, again, as caregivers that, we pick the pink sheets because you're a female, and we just think that, I'm going to make them feel so welcome, and heart's in the right place, right? But sometimes we forget that this is a living soul that's been through quite a bit of trauma, just being removed from their home, oftentimes not knowing even why. And so even the same kind of powerlessness that you feel, I think sometimes caregivers feel the same thing. Like, we're here to help heal this child and love this child, and yet we're strangers to this child. And so I think sometimes over react to try to make them feel welcome, and maybe forget to ask questions that are just the little things.
Yeah, definitely. I know one thing that makes a big difference was when I was first coming into a house and they were like, oh, look at this desk, you have a desk, look at this mirror, you have this, you have that, and I know they were pointing everything out to be really kind and show me how much they care, but at the same time, it was just kind of this feeling of, well, I didn't get any opinion here. I didn't have any say. You set up this whole room for me, which is really lovely, but it's just another place in another house I don't know with people I don't know.
So what could it?
So
what would that look like then? If you were to kind of imagine that perfect scenario that would, and that really that first step, that walking in the door and being welcomed, is so important because it begins that relationship. It begins that hopefully transparency and start to build trust. What would that look like if you were to kind of imagine in your mind what that perfect scenario would be if you walked in a door and you're walking into a stranger's home? What do you want them to do? What do you want them to say?
Yeah, it's definitely, I would like them to, say what, like that start was great, of here's what we set up for you. But also to add, if there's anything you still need or if there's anything else that you want to change, just giving that little extra. It's okay to make changes. It's okay to want something else, Even though the gestures are super appreciated and super nice, just giving that control back and also, allowing the opportunity of whenever you want to tell me if you want a different bed sheet or something, that's okay. You don't have to tell me right now. Go ahead and get settled in first. So it's that feeling of being able to kind of calm down from this immediate unfamiliar situation and then establishing some sort of trust where, I can still come back to you if I need to.
So leaving the door open. And it almost not just leaving it open, but encouraging you to step through it. In other words, this is a safe place where you get to say how you feel, what you need, and know that someone's not going to come back with, well, I just spent $1,000 on this room and I thought you would appreciate it. And look at you, you don't appreciate it, right? Not that any of us would want to be like that, but it can be hurtful, right? Because you're like, I'm giving a part of my home, my heart to this child, and we want them to love it. But it's so valuable, Elyzabeth, to hear your perspective, because as a child or a youth coming into a home, you have no clue their lives either, right? They don't know you, but you don't know them. And it's a two-way street, right? We have to be able to be open and transparent and say, you're my first foster child. I didn't know really what you need and what you want. I hope I didn't step for too far, right? I hope you like this color, but if you don't, I am so cool with that. We'll go to the store and pick out something that's specific to you. So more of a vulnerability from the caregiver too. Don't you think that might help?
Yeah, absolutely. Knowing that it's gonna be okay to, if you're able to open up and share things with me, then maybe I'll be able to open up and share things with you. It's definitely a two-way relationship.
It is, and we don't have all the answers. I mean, Elyzabeth, I would love to say that, the folks that are out here doing this work, right, that we're magical. And even though we might have moments where something really cool might happen, for the most part, we're struggling just like you. And we're all vulnerable. We're all broken in many ways. And I think that when we really look at mental health, what we really need is transparency. We really just kind of need to be vulnerable and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling today. Or when you said that, it hurt my feelings. And by doing that with our youth, I would hope that they would see that we're human too. We're vulnerable. And then that would open the door for you to be transparent.
Yeah, exactly. And also seeing how, if, this is a space where you're able to open up and be vulnerable, then that means it's a safe place where I don't need to have my guard up all the time. Especially when so many other environments, you've been in, it's not safe. You have to push all the emotion away because you need to survive. So showing this is an okay place to have emotion could go a long way.
Sometimes we just need to be that emotional being, and it needs to be a safe place to do that. And when we don't have a safe place, then we bring in kind of the hired guns, right? We bring in the RHEP teams and the TBS teams, and we bring in, and which in with many cases is necessary for sure. But what we can do as caregivers is so important to lay a foundation of vulnerability, transparency, and love.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing I've always said, when I was going through the system, is always, this is a house, not a home, because a home is where, you have this love. And if it's not there, then it's not ever going to be, it's never going to be a home. It's never going to be a safe space. But if you can just show that it's okay to be you, and you can have your bad days, you can have good days, just, this is a space where it's okay, then that's a space of love. That is what a home is.
No one wants to feel disposable. No one wants to feel like the second I trip that someone's going to say, okay, pack your bags. I bet just the thought of that probably gives you kind of a sense of, I don't know, just a stomach ache. I know just even saying it, I had that feeling. And we have to make sure that when we open the door for a youth, we shut the door. And we don't continue to open it and say that it's a place where if you make a mistake, you're out. And that is not a healing home. There are times when children need to be, perhaps therapy, maybe a higher level of care. With very few children in the system, there, is a percentage that need maybe a higher level of care. But for the most part, children in our foster care system are not disposable. They're kids going through trauma. They're kids going through a lot of just emotional issues, teen issues. And then when you add that to foster care, it can be a challenging journey. But we have to walk it together and stop looking at each other like we're on opposite sides of the teams, right? We're not competing. We're not against each other. We should be the biggest cheerleaders for each other, don't you think?
Yeah, and I really like how you worded it earlier, because, there is always this feeling of, if I make a mistake, then I'll be out, and you don't do that with a biological kid. You never have that sense of, okay, well, they've just always been here. They've always been in this space, so treat a foster kid the same way that you would treat your biological kid. There's no difference. And, once they're in your house and once they're under your care, you just have to make them feel like they belong. There's so many places in their background probably where they've probably felt where they haven't belonged. They're going to another stranger's house. But if you can show them that that's a place where they can stay, and no matter if they do have a really bad day or something happens to them, they're still gonna have a place, and you can provide that place for them.
We all deserve that. We all
Absolutely.
deserve a sense of belonging, a sense of attachment, and that it's not kind of sitting on the edge, like, okay, love you, I'm here for you, but you just did this, so see you later, right? No one can heal, no matter how many therapists, right? It's a human right to be in a home with a loving family, whether they birthed you, whether you share DNA or not. When we make choices to bring children into our home, we are inviting them into our home. We're not inviting them to walk into our house. And simply the way I would think we communicate, our eye contact, our voice, right? The level of our tone all speaks to you as that child that you're welcome. And it should never change, even if there's a mistake made or a grade goes down in school or whatever that kind of issue is. Children's love doesn't change based on behavior. The love is always there. And if we can't provide that love, that unconditional love, then we probably shouldn't be fostering.
Absolutely. Like you said, they go through even just day-to-day activities, If I know, for example, I was having a rough time with some of my friends, and so that made me a little upset when I went back home. And so, I was upset, and I was just like, I need everyone to leave me alone. But when you are angry, when you are upset, and your caregivers, you feel this sense of you can't trust that they won't just abandon you again. It's hard to express your needs and express your emotions. So if you can just set that little foundation there of, it's okay, you can come back, you can take your space, but then you can come back. We're not going to send you away. You can go calm down, take the space you need, and come back and talk to us, and that is completely okay. That's what makes all the difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You are always welcome, right? You are always, you always have a seat at our table. And that's what's important. Elyzabeth, thank you for being so vulnerable, so transparent. You are a survivor. You are helping so many kids and caregivers right now with just sharing your story. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.